debate for the Town of Winchester Select Board, sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Winchester. Just a couple of housekeeping issues. Please silence your cell phones. And if you're looking for a restroom, if you go to the back of the room on the right, just on your left, you will find a restroom. My name is Kim Foley, and it is my pleasure to represent the League of Women Voters of Winchester as we bring this evening's event. The League would like to acknowledge and thank the Cummings Foundation for their generous grant that makes it possible for the Jenks Center to offer use of the facility at no cost to nonprofits like ours. Thank you also to WinCam for streaming it to the public and making it available on the WinCam website. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization with a mission to promote informed participation by all eligible voters and public understanding of major policy issues. We do not support or oppose any candidates or political parties. We do study and take positions about major policy issues. We are organized at the national, state, and local levels. Our policy positions and activities can be reviewed on the respective websites. If this forum and our mission meet your needs or even inspire you, we encourage you to donate or become a member. Student membership is free. This year, there are several contested seats among the townwide boards. 2 seats on the Select Board, 2 on the School Committee, and 1 position on the Housing Authority Board of Commissioners. The 4 candidates for Select Board who are debating this evening, and candidates running for other offices, including many of those running for town meeting, have provided the League with information about themselves and their candidacies. You can find these candidate profiles on our website at lwvwinchester.org. Thank you, candidates, for submitting your profiles to the League. Winchester town government is run primarily by volunteers, and we are fortunate to have candidates for all townwide boards this year. However, there are write-in opportunities for town meeting seats in precincts 1 and 8. Contact the town clerk if you are interested in undertaking a write-in campaign. This evening's debate will be moderated by Margaret Copey. Margaret is a trained League moderator and a member of the League of Women Voters of Winchester.
Good evening, and thank you. Thank you for inviting me back again this year. The Winchester Select Board has 5 members, each serving 3-year terms. Election for these seats is staggered. This year, 4 candidates are running for 2 seats on the Select Board. The candidates running for Select Board are Michael Betancourt, the incumbent, Vincent Dixon, William McGonigal, and Dorothy Simboli. The rules for the debate are as follows. Each candidate will have up to 2 minutes for an opening statement. The speaker order was determined ahead of time by a random method, and they are seated in the order in which they will do their opening statements. After that, I will ask the candidates a series of prepared questions in rotating order. Each candidate will have up to 90 seconds for each answer. After each set of answers, I may request a rebuttal depending on what we've heard. Should a candidate choose to rebut, the candidate will have up to 30 seconds to do so. I may ask a follow-up question, depending on how that discussion has gone. Personal references about other candidates are out of order. After our final question, each candidate will have up to 60 seconds for a closing statement. The closing statements will be given in reverse order from the opening statements. And just so you know, we have timekeepers sitting in the front row. And could I ask the timekeepers to just raise their cards so that I can see them and so that the audience can see them so that they know. Can you raise them so people can see? Yeah, and okay. Thank you. Yeah, it's important that everybody be able to see that. Candidates, we'll now start with, what? Oh, stop? Okay. We will now start with opening statements, 2 minutes each. Mr. Betancourt, you go first.
Thank you. Thank you to the League of Women Voters. It's always an honor and privilege to be here and an important forum for our community and our democratic process. For those of you who don't know me, I'm currently in my 9th year on the Select Board and a longtime member of the League. I live up near Vincent Owen with my wife Katie, a teacher in Lexington, and my daughter Violet, who is a freshman at Winchester High School. Our oldest daughter Grace is in her first year at UMass Amherst. I believe the most important issue facing the town is affordability. As we have limited commercial revenue, the vast majority of financial resources come straight from the taxpayers. Over the past decade, there are no similar communities that have invested more in capital projects, including school buildings, than Winchester. At the same time, the Select Board has made affordable housing our #1 priority and made enormous progress. However, we have more to do. While the Lynch School is under construction and Morocco close behind, we must also focus on maintaining aging facilities and addressing capital needs throughout the town with heavily stressed stabilization funds and increasing interest rates. We need to be both strategic and creative. I believe the Community Preservation Act passage before town meeting this spring will address some of these needs, but not all. The CPA gives us additional revenue that includes a state match. This is another tool for the town manager as she develops a capital improvement program over the next several years. In my 9 years on the Select Board, I think the town is successful when we are strategic, collaborative, and we communicate well. That means, above all else, making tough decisions about priorities. Maintaining our AAA bond rating is essential to our progress. We need to borrow within our means to get projects done before rising costs push them further and further away. However, we can't make fear-based decisions and rely just on large overrides to solve our problems. For Winchester to remain an inclusive community, we need to see through the lens of affordability and determine what our wants and what our needs. We need to support what's best for our students, but also for our seniors and everyone in between. Thank you.
Thank you. And we now hear from, is it Ms. or Mrs., or do you prefer?
Ms. is fine.
Pardon?
Ms. is fine.
For Ms. Simboli.
Good evening. I'm Dorothy Simboli, a town meeting member and Board of Appeals member since 2016. And I've been a resident in Winchester since for 24 years, since 2000. If elected, I will bring to Winchester my experience in public service and as a real estate and land use lawyer. I've also been a former Winchester Public Schools parent of a special education student. So I bring some knowledge and expertise in the IEP process and also in the implementation of SPED programs within Winchester Public Schools. Beyond that, I'm also the mom to 2 other children, so 3 adult children. I'm running because I care deeply about Winchester, its residents, both current and future, and its spirit of volunteerism and service. During my time on town meeting, I have realized that I wanted to contribute during the problem-solving stages of our town governance. I am creative and independent, and I would like to come to the table with some solutions to our current fiscal situation. We are facing a potential $1.9 million deficit, and we need to achieve a balanced budget. At the same time, we need to not sacrifice health, education, wellness, social services, and housing choice. I believe that I can represent all residents of Winchester. You can find out more about me on my website, votesimboli.com. I ask for your vote for Select Board on Tuesday, March 26th.
Thank you, Ms. Simboli. And we'll now hear from William McGonigal.
Thank you. Thank you to the League for organizing this event and the Jenks Center for hosting it. My name is Bill McGonigal, and I ask you to vote for me for the Winchester Select Board. If elected, I will bring a breadth of experience, a commitment to collaboration and communication, and a dedication to this town. I'm a lawyer, I'm a litigator, and some of my clients are municipalities. That means I'm familiar with the issues they face and the solutions that they need. I know how to spot the red flags that, if avoided, can save our town a lot of hassle and a lot of money. Now, in doing that, I rely on my experts, and our town is full of them. We are lucky to have so many talented people who are volunteering their time to our town. They deserve to be heard, and they deserve to be respected. And if you have an idea or an opinion or a complaint, I want to hear it. I'm not just saying that. I practice what I preach. Over the last few weeks, I've been out talking to as many people as I can. Residents, board members, committee members, staff members. And sometimes we've disagreed. That's part of the process. Challenging ourselves is what makes us strong. Some of the best ideas I've heard and solutions I've seen have come from my opposing counsel. That's why you have to keep an open mind and an open ear. Now, the biggest challenge that we face in this town is that we have a lot of projects that we want to get done, but we have limited funds. If we're going to be successful, we're going to have to work together to determine short and long-term solutions, like the CPA. Solutions that draw from the expertise of our staff and boards and efficiently use our resources, plan for the future, and earn the trust of our residents. I'm all in on Winchester. I'm here for the long haul. I've got 2 kids at Lincoln in a neighborhood I don't want to move out of. I only have that because of the people who built it for me, who came before me. I want to pay that back and pay it forward to make sure our town continues to offer those resources for everyone who comes next. Thank you for your time. Vote for Bill McGonigal for Select Board on the 26th.
Thank you, Mr. McGonigal. And now, Mr. Dixon.
My name is Vincent Lawrence Vince Dixon, and I'm here to ask for one of your 2 votes for Select Board for the town of Winchester in this year's 2024 town election on Tuesday, March 26th. While I do not presently hold office, I have a record of accomplishment in the city of Boston, where I grew up, in Cambridge, where I was born and lived for several decades, and now here in Winchester, where I've lived since 2012. As an historian, I know that part of Winchester was part of the land grant given to John Harvard, and at his passing, which was sold, and so helped to fund our original state college and university, Harvard. My education and range of varied experiences give meaning to a career, always including public and or community service. Homeschooled by my parents, earning an associate and a bachelor's degree with honors from Harvard University Extension School, an outgrowth of the Lyceum movement, which once had a significant building in our downtown. I am a grassroots working class kid who grew up along the way, earning a Master of Education from the Harvard Graduate School of Education, entering into corporate strategic planning, where with extensive academic work in economics, I helped to train MBAs and corporate planners using business analysis, innovative mathematical modeling, common sense marketing approaches, and more. Trained in systems analysis, financial and management accounting, micro and macroeconomics, I have applied this knowledge and skills in various sectors of society. Over the years, I've always been engaged, learning, listening, advocating, and continuing to perfect my understanding of the balance between history, current events, and future opportunities. While this forum is relatively short, I thank the Winchester League of Women Voters for holding it. I think you will see and hear that you want me to be one of your members of the Select Board of Winchester because I have the knowledge, experience, and temperament needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dixon. We'll now go to question 1, and we will be starting with Ms. Zimboli. Question is, how would you propose to balance the town budget during your term on the Select Board? What would you prioritize? 90 seconds.
So, first of all, the Select Board takes its cue on the budget from Finance Committee. So, and obviously also the schools, they have their own budget. So we don't actually determine the budget. It's not that Select Board can sort of say yes or no, we need to cut that. We need to take our cue from Finance Committee. But we are facing a $1.9 million deficit, as I mentioned, and we have a couple of different funds. We have a building stabilization fund and a capital stabilization fund, both of which were created in 2002. And then we have free cash. And we have, obviously, the potential for CPA, which is going to bring in, I believe, currently it brings in 21% matching from the state, so that's a new resource for us. We also can come up with new ways to bring in revenue, encourage our businesses to stay and bring in new businesses, develop some other strategies to bring in revenue to the town. But I do think that the funds that we do have, we need to think clearly about that and exercise fiscal prudence.
Thank you. Mr. McGonigal, you have 90 seconds.
Thank you. I think we need to put an eye towards not just balancing the budget for any immediate year, but also looking towards the future. Dorothy's right. A lot of the budget is set by the school committee. It's set by the town manager. It gets reviewed by FinCom. It gets input from the capital planning community. All those people need to have a seat at the table, so we're making sure we're coming at it with balanced priorities that reflect all of the different views of our town. But again, we can't just look at this year. We have to look at the future years. We have to plan in advance for facilities that are going to need repairs and look for ways of saving up and putting money aside and making new income so we're prepared for those events before they become emergencies. We got a lot to do. The CPA is certainly one way to bring in some more money, state dollars that we're already paying out, and that can help us down the road. We're also going to have to look at just every other opportunity. So if we get to that big word that we don't like talking about, the override, we know it is a necessity, and we've earned the trust of the people when we bring it up. It's a big, complicated discussion. We have to look at the facts, we have to respect the truth, but we have to have everybody involved in the conversation to prove that we're doing it right and we're doing it in a sustainable fashion. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dixon, you have 90 seconds.
A $156 million proposed budget is what we're looking at. There was an operating override several years back, which was supposed to last about 2 to 3 years. It's lasted about 5 for a variety of reasons. That's a good thing. But operating budgets are not the only way we should be looking at how to solve the problem. We have to have a balance systemically. We have to look at reasonable development in the downtown district. The North Main Street corridor, which was rezoned to allow some development, has not had much there. We also have to look at other mechanisms as well. You'll hear me talk about in this campaign and a little bit tonight about what I call the 3 R's of government. Respect the constitutional system, following the law, including state requirements. Reform, looking at our own system and redoing our system as perhaps needed. And the rule of law, the oath or affirmation of office says to faithfully execute the laws. And there have been people in this town who have not paid attention to that, who have basically accepted the narrative that more and more people at the state and national level talk about, which is somehow it's my opinion or yours. No, the rule of law is about a higher quality standard and reaching a consensus. And remember, the select board is a committee executive. Instead of a mayor, you have 5 people who should be achieving consensus, and there has to be a balance between actual needs and advocacy. One of them is looking at the school system, and we'll look at that further.
Thank you. And Mr. Betancourt, 90 seconds.
Thank you. The budget starts with the town manager and is built working with all the departments in town and the schools. By the time it gets to FinCom for review, there's been a lot of input in it. And I think the strategy for how the town deals with financial issues over the next several years needs to start there. We can't just go from year to year. There needs to be at least a 5-year plan moving forward, and we have to be creative. And we have to make sacrifices as well, right? And we have to make hard decisions. We were told that this override was, this last one that passed in 2019 was just going to be a 2 to 3 year override, I think as Vince mentioned, and we extended it out. We were strategic. The year that everybody thought was going to be the worst year, we balanced the budget with no free cash. I see Mi-Lin Trong here, who really worked hard on the finance committee to make that happen. Everybody thought it was impossible, but working together, we really made that happen. And one of the recommendations I made when we were looking to add a sustainability director was to not add to our personnel costs, which are our highest cost and the most variable in our budget every year. And we see this, the school negotiations have led to significant increases that are well-deserved, but they're factor into increases above our 2.5% that we get every year. So when we were looking at hiring a sustainability director, the select board said, let's create a sustainability fee to add on to building permit requests. That money then funds that position. That position then helped us be strategic with the Lynch project to get money from the federal government to put solar on the building. We'll generate revenue from that to reduce the operating cost of the building long term. So
Thank
there's
you.
a lot we can do. Thank you.
Thank
Sorry
you.
to go over.
Okay. The next question, we'll be starting with Mr. McGonigal. The question is, do you think we need to make any changes to how we fund and draw from the capital and building stabilization funds? 90 seconds.
Yes. Would you like more?
You don't have to take
The-
all 90 seconds.
The capitalization, the two stabilization funds were created in 2002 with the best of intent. But there were some things that they didn't account for, and there are some things that need to be updated with them. The numbers that they were based upon were numbers that were created in 2002. Since then, costs have gone up, inflation has gone up in ways that we couldn't predict back then. That means we need to go back and review it. And we need to make sure that review continues, because the reality of the world is things change. And the more that we review, the more regular that becomes, the easier it's going to be for us to keep pace with what our town needs. And the easier it's going to be for our residents to know what those costs are going to be. While we're doing that, we need to keep our eye out for every opportunity to bring more money into this town. If we have another opportunity like the CPA, which I hope gets passed, we got to jump on it. If we have opportunities to inspire business to come into our town through zoning initiatives, we got to explore those as well. We have to be creative, and we have to look for opportunities, and we have to collaborate to actually make sure that they happen, and they happen in a way that reflects our values as a town. But in the end, it's the numbers. So we got to get out, work, and make some more income where we don't have it at the moment.
Thank you. Mr. Dixon, you have 90 seconds.
Bill gave me a nice opening. Community Preservation Act funds are important. We have bypassed them for years by not having it. But I recognize that it is an increase in taxes and revenue. We get some back from the state by doing that, but we also do put in some investment money of our own. I'm willing to support the CPA because it is a nice spotlight on parks and history and recognition of things that make this town one of the pleasant and unique places that it is. Very important to put the spotlight on it as well as some money for it. But recognizing there's a tax increase, I think we could come up with a simple formula that recognizes that part of that should be a credit against our other revenues and budget. So it's not just a pure increase. Too often, governments over the years have relied on increasing taxes. Homeowners in this town feel that burden. There's other ways to do that, including stronger engagement in revenue from new development. And I propose the creation of a specific new revenues committee, a commission actually, to look at it on a long-term basis, not just based on a particular year or two ahead, but what is the strategic way in which we should recruit businesses. We need to have stronger planning services. We had a terrible negligence for 8 months. The one town planner we had was gone, and we had none. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bettencourt, 90 seconds.
Thank you. I think we need a new strategy for our capital and building stabilization funds. As Bill mentioned, they were set up a while ago and funded at a certain level. They're not meeting the demand and the capacity of our buildings and the market, especially with interest rates increasing. So I also think that one thing I've been hearing from the Finance Committee is we need to invest more in maintenance so we can extend the life of existing facilities, so we're not waiting until they are completely in a state of failure before we replace them, right? And that's been successful. We had a project at Lincoln that was a very high priority on the school side, $1.5 million, replacing some of the flat work there. We were able to repair it. It'll give us another few years of life there, and we're able to put those resources somewhere else. And I think that's an important strategy for us. Of course, I'm a big supporter of the CPA. It makes sense. That's going to give us another $2 million likely of revenue every year. Will be helpful, but it's not going to address the backlog. One of the things, as a member of the Capital Planning Committee, that I pushed in 2021 was override for the Morocco Life Extension Program and the Project 10 for flood mitigation. Those projects were in excess of $10 million. They were health and safety priorities for us, and the town said, we know you guys need more money to get these done, and I think that's what we need to do, is figure out what we can do with the stabilization funds and what we need to go out to the voters for. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Cimboli, 90 seconds.
So, as Mr. McGonigal mentioned, and I mentioned earlier, these two stabilization funds were created back in 2002. They were growth measures. They were supposed to accumulate funds so that every, I believe it was 5 years, we'd have $15 million set aside for a major project. But when we created these funds, there were never bylaws set in place with regard to the guardrails and how those funds were going to be managed. So over time, both building and capitalization have been used to slap Band-Aids on things. Whenever we just need money, pull money out of those funds. And there's also been money that town meeting has authorized that has sort of merged into those funds, which does not grow at 2.5%. So I would look back at establishing a bylaw around those two funds and putting in some guardrails and having, so that we understand exactly where that money is going, and those reserves are then compounding and growing with the intent that was originally in place when they were created. There are certain things that are not covered by those funds. New building projects of a less sizable manner, like the Lake Street Bridge, were not intended to be covered by those funds. Maybe we need to create a new fund for those other types of projects. I definitely agree that CPA can bring in some more money.
Finish your sentence.
Sorry for going over it.
No. Did you have anything you wanted to add?
I would just say that if we do CPA, that we also establish guardrails and a bylaw around CPA,
Okay.
so there's specific purposes in how those funds are going to be used, and a team that makes those decisions.
Thank you.
Madam Moderator, may I just rebut something?
Sure.
One thing that's interesting about when the 2002 stabilization funds were created is there were guardrails set up, but they were struck down when the bylaw went up to the state for review, and the shall was forced to be turned into a may, because one town meeting cannot bind a future town meeting. That's the sort of important detail you need to keep an eye on when you're crafting bylaws. And that's the sort of experience I'm hoping to bring to the select board, so that when we do these sorts of initiatives, we know how they're going to play out as best as possible into the future.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to comment?
Well, this comes back to respecting the
Yeah.
law and following it and being realistic about it. We have an entirely volunteer government in terms of these elected positions. We know that many of these boards and individuals are spending 30 or 40 hours a week, in the case of the planning board even more, because we didn't for 8 months have a single paid staff member. And I think we ought to at least explore a small stipend to townwide officers to recognize the value of that, and perhaps bring some people who have more professional background.
Thank you. Mr. Betancourt, I see you. You wanted to say something?
Yes, I'll be very quick. One of the strategies that we've employed this year is to invest in a VFA program, which allows us to track projects and when they come due, right? So when we open the doors to Lynch in 2025, it's going to be a beautiful brand new building, but we will have in our system when that roof needs to be replaced, so it won't surprise us. So we can plan strategically for that. We have been surprised over several years. One of the reasons that the stabilization funds got hurt was because we levered them up right when we had them, because we had such a backlog. So Lake Street Bridge is a good example. The state came, did an inspection. We thought we had 5 years to redo that bridge. They said, you got to do it today. We had to come up with a few $1 million and reroute traffic in a way that people weren't excited about. So
Thank you. Thank you.
Not
Ms.
happy about it.
Ms. Cimboli, do you want to finish up this discussion?
Yes, I would just like to say, as Mr. Betancourt mentioned, that the school buildings do have a game plan as to when the lifespan of something is going to expire, and they're prepared and they know about it. We can do the same thing for our town buildings. So the town manager budgets and he manages those buildings, and we should be looking at when those replacements happen, when they are due to expire, and when they're coming due, so that we can prepare in advance.
Thank you. Okay, we'll now go on to question 3, and we'll be starting with Mr. Dixon on question 3. What do you think the roles of the Finance Committee and the Capital Planning Committee should be in establishing a capital plan for the town? 90 seconds.
90 seconds on a $156 million budget, having sat on the Finance Committee for 4 years. Without going into personalities, the Finance Committee, from what I understand, has been turned into more of a pickup basketball game, no longer as effective in making the recommendations that are important. And we have to go back to that. Remember, I've talked about respect, reform, and rule of law. Respect is central to this. The Select Board needs to work collaboratively. It needs to have a recognition of the Roberts Rules of Order, which were written all the way back by a Civil War veteran in the 1800s. That's the historian in me, but it has rescued many meetings from chaos. And frankly, every elected member and many of the appointed members of this town lack the professional training and sophistication they need to do their job. But of course, we don't pay quite as much as some other communities, and so we're oftentimes losing the kind of quality or commitment to quality that we should have. This is an educated town. Many people who are both educated and well off in different ways gave the majority for Nikki Haley in our election this week, as did many other well-run communities, and we need to make sure that that statement of resistance to totalitarian rule is carried out in our local government by adequate finances, by proper legal processes.
Thank you. Mr. Betancourt, 90 seconds.
Would you mind repeating the question? I was
Sure.
talking to Dorothy when you read the question. I apologize.
Sure. Okay. Yes, I will always repeat questions if anybody needs it.
Thank you.
What do you think the roles of the Finance Committee and the Capital Planning Committee should be in establishing a capital plan for the town? 90 seconds.
I think the capital improvement program that the Finance Committee works with the Capital Planning Committee and the Town Manager on is essential for us to have in 5-year increments and to really look at the data we have. As I mentioned, the VFA program that we used ARPA funds to update, something you have to keep investing in year over year to make sure your information and the costs in the market are consistent. So I think that we have a great working relationship, and it's an extremely collaborative conversation between the Finance Committee, the Capital Planning Committee, Select Board, and the Town Manager. And I hope it continues. You know, I have a great respect for members of the Finance Committee. They're fantastic volunteers. They very rarely support some of the things that I do, but we get to a place where we move the town forward. And as I mentioned earlier, you know, nobody thought that we could have had a balanced budget a few years ago without free cash. And so I think our capital plan needs to be savvy as well as our process. So thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Simboli, 90 seconds?
Could you repeat the question one more time? Sorry.
That's okay. What do you think the roles of the Finance Committee and the Capital Planning Committee should be in establishing a capital plan for the town?
Well, first of all, kudos to both of those committees. I mean, they both are made up of volunteers, and they work very, very hard to be accountable to the taxpayers and come up with a plan, a compromise to make, you know, to get certain capital needs done. And also FinCom does a phenomenal job in reviewing those numbers. FinCom makes recommendations. They review the numbers, they make recommendations. They don't actually put forth saying, we think you should repair this building or replace these windows. I think Capital Planning Committee's role should be, as I mentioned earlier, to come up with a long-term game plan as to what things need to be replaced, how long they can last, and when we do a new replacement of something, we have an idea about what the time frame is on when we're going to be looking to replace that item. I think the two organizations work really well together with the Select Board and communicating to town meeting what those needs are. And I really appreciate the people who work on them.
Thank you. Mr. McGonigal.
They all need seats at the table. I started this discussion tonight with my opening statement about how I rely on experts. Capital Planning, FinCom, those are two of our experts here in town. For those who don't know, the Capital Planning Committee They really understand the assets that our town is made up of. It's buildings, it's infrastructure, all that stuff. FinCom, those are our financial advisors. They know how the money works and how it might impact us if we spend too much or spend too little, or if we lose our bond rating. They're looking at the same problems, and they're just seeing it through slightly different lenses. In the past week, I've sat down with both Jimmy Johnson from the Capital Planning Committee and John Miller from the FinCom. They both want the same things. They both have the same concerns. They just see a few issues as slightly differently. We have to know that. We have to respect it. We have to take all those viewpoints into our solution. So how would I involve the Capital Planning Committee or in the FinCom? I'd keep them closely involved all along the way, from the very beginning, as we look at our budget and look at what we want to invest in as a town. Because they're going to help us identify the issues that we need to solve, the questions we need to answer, so we have them by the time we get in front of town meeting and in front of the voters, so people know that we can be trusted and we're steering the town in the right path. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, well, now go to question 4, and with that one, we will start with Mr. Betancourt. How would you promote civility and negotiation in public conversations in our town government, including the select board? 90 seconds.
Thank you. That's a great question. And, I was able to serve on the Mass Municipal Association, Select Board Association for many years. And this is a conversation that a lot of public officials talk about with the newspapers that have not been as active, except for the Winchester News that has now started, and certainly the Daily Times Chronicle. The Facebook and social media has taken over, and some of that information, a lot of it is hostile. It's not ideal for local government and people that live in the community together. I think the school committee does a great job. They have kind of a code of conduct and standards by which they run their meetings and how they engage with each other. And I think that all boards and committees should adopt something like that. When you have norms set and you really hold everyone accountable, then I think that it makes for a better, more collegial atmosphere. When I first got on the select board in 2015, it wasn't like that. And we used to get done with our business and we used to go out for a beer, and it used to be social, it used to be a good time, and I look forward to going to every meeting. Now it's a little bit different. We still are getting a lot done, but on the other hand, there's a lot more hostility, and issues come up, and I think it gets in the way of progress if that hostility is allowed to keep there. So I would certainly be an advocate for creating norms on the select board, something that I've asked for many years now. So.
Thank you. Ms. Simboli,
Could you repeat the question,
Sure.
please?
how would you promote civility and negotiation in public conversations in our town government, including the select board?
I think the select board and all of our boards serve as terrific role models for the rest of town in terms of getting things done. I agree with Mr. Betancourt that some of the conversation on social media creates a lot of misunderstandings. I think misconceptions lead to those misunderstandings, and it interferes with the clear flow of information. The facts, people need to start with the facts. Winchester News has been phenomenal in their startup, and I'm hoping that more people will use Winchester News as a resource for gaining facts. My goal on Select Board would to be open to open channels of communication across all the boards and committees so that we all understand the facts of what each board and committee is doing and the work that they've done and the reasons for them making the recommendations that they are going to be recommending. We need to just start listening to facts and not to sound bites and not operating with assumptions.
Thank you. Mr. McGonigal, would you like me to repeat the question?
That's okay, Madam
Okay,
Moderator.
that's all right.
I believe very strongly in leading by example. And if we're going to promote civility, it starts with us. That means having the patience to sit down and listen to somebody who might not understand all the complex nuances that the town has to face, but they've got a problem in their life. And maybe it's not something the select board even handles, but it's something a select board member can still listen to. It starts there. And then you spread it to listening to the other members of the select board. And then you spread it to listening to other members of the other committees and everything else. And it grows. And as you give people patience and understanding and empathy, they give it back to you and you pass it along to others. But it starts with you. We have to set the example. And I'm happy to be up on this dais right now with these other individuals because they can do it, and I've seen them, and it's great. I've worked with Dorothy on the zoning board. We've disagreed, but we've worked through it and done some great opinions and helped people do what they wanted to do with their houses. I had the opportunity to sit down with Mike the other day and just have a cocktail. He's more than just my elected official, he's another guy. And making those connections is how you have civility. I haven't had the chance to do that with Vince yet, but I would love to. I hear he has a great voice. I'd love to harmonize with him. But if we want civility, we have to be civil, and it starts with each of us. And I guarantee you, I will adhere to that sort of principle, and I would love to hear from anybody and prove it to you.
Thank you. Mr. Dixon, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, thank you, and I won't sing out a hymn because that would take more than 2 minutes, I think.
Okay.
I have a long experience in a lot of different things, as I mentioned at the beginning, because I don't have to get elected to the select board and figure out what's going on, and many people have done that over the years. I think I detect in what Michael Betancourt has said a sense of professionalization that we need as our population grows and the sophistication is larger. I'll take as an example what I did when I was part of a team of people that saved the Anti-Poverty Agency in Cambridge. It was an agency with 60 people with a budget of well over $1 million providing service to thousands of people. And we had a non-functional board that was legally not in existence. The team of people that we put together with the help of the state actually was a new board, and we had board meetings that weren't going anywhere. And as board president, I said, we will have informal meetings, which after all, board meetings share information until we get quorums, and people began to come to meetings because they discovered there were discussions going on and that they better be there to actually participate in votes to help guide the agency. We saved that agency. I put on my suit and tie, went over and talked to the city manager, who said he didn't want to have to take over our services, and we found the resources. And if you think you got problems in finance, in the Anti-Poverty Agency, we had to have a federal budget, a state budget, and our own budget on different calendars. So we paid 3 times the amount of auditing that many organizations do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dixon. Okay, we're now going to go to question 5, which is about the MBTA Communities Act, and it's a longer question than the others, so anytime you want this repeated, please don't hesitate. The MBTA Communities Act requires that communities served by the MBTA should provide at least one zoning district of reasonable size that includes multifamily housing for all ages, that for Winchester is within walking distance of the Winchester Center commuter rail station. Here come the questions. What changes, if any, would you propose be made to the planning board's current proposed response? What recommendations do you have for improving the community's understanding of the proposal? And we are starting with Ms. Simboli. So a two-part question. What changes would you propose to what the planning board has proposed? And what would you do for improving the community's understanding of that proposal?
Okay. So, truth be told, I wanted to be across the street tonight at the Planning Board's public presentation on the MBTA Communities Act, and I think they may also be including their plan for the development of North Main Street. I'm not sure if I would propose any changes. I need to see it in its current form. I know they're continuing to work on it. They have spent an inordinate amount of time on this project, along with our town planner and our ZRAC, who made recommendations on it. I know that they've attempted to include senior housing They've attempted to include 10% affordable housing, and they've attempted to make mixed-use structures. They've presented this to the state, and the state has said, no, we can't do those things. So I'm not sure what changes I would propose, because I don't think that's, we have the ability to do that. I mean, this is really a state law, and they're telling us what we can and can't do. And the planner and the planning board know way more about that than I do. What would I do to help the the public understand is go to the public information. I mean, I told everybody they wanted to come tonight to the debate. I said, go to the public information session on MBTA. It is not recorded. When Kim is recording this, they can watch this later. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McGonigal, would you like me to repeat the questions?
That's okay. So I'll answer the second question first. Improving community understanding. I'll do that by highlighting why this is such an important thing. First off, it's required by state statute, and if we don't adhere to the MBTA 3A requirements by the end of this year, we're going to lose funding, we're going to be subject to lawsuits, we're going to end up like having the mess that they had in Milton. There's no reason we should do that. But more than that, the MBTA 3A overlay is going to provide a lot of fantastic opportunities that we can learn from and maybe apply further across our town to create more opportunities and develop more revenue. The planning board has been meticulous in putting the zoning incentives together for this overlay. They've gone block by block up North Main Street and made sure that the communities that are already there are not going to be swallowed up by some big building. They've done it by making sure their height requirements make sense. They've done it by making sure the setbacks make sense and create a wonderful walking area. But they've also put in incentives to make sure businesses are attracted to these areas and that developers have an interest of creating more affordable housing, both big A and little A. And that's the sort of detail-oriented approach and creative problem solving that we need. It's important to know that this overlay is not going to change North Main Street overnight. It just presents opportunities. But these are the opportunities that Winchester needs. So would I make changes to it? No. I'd instead like to learn from it and try to apply it further. But otherwise, the planning board has done a great job, and we should all be behind them.
Thank you. Mr. Dixon, would you like me to repeat any of the questions?
No, thank you. In fact, in Cambridge, over the years, I was involved in a lot of zoning. And it is a nightmare that will keep you up or put you to sleep in either direction, nothing in between. Actually, I was part of a team of people in 2 occasions, one of which rezoned the space between East Harvard Square down towards City Hall and the rest into the edge of Central Square, that reduced the scale and allowed setbacks designed in a different way so that Mass Avenue between Harvard and Central Square would not be canyonized. It's not just whether you build to particular specifications, but how you build those, whether you listen to the community, and we had to get a 2/3 vote, 6 out of 9 votes to get it, and we got a couple of the conservative people who thought we were liberals even though we weren't, to do those things. And there's a lot else that needs to be done here. Civics is the operating manual of government that people need to know more about, and that is the Constitution. It is regulations, it's public hearing and process, and we need to understand those better. And I think when it comes to planning and zoning, we should have probably some kind of regular process by which members of the planning board have additional training with members of the community who want to come to those sessions. This is complex stuff. Some people question whether amateur civilians should be doing this, but they do have that, and so they should be given the training necessary to be able to be not run over by developers and lawyers, sorry about that, who are making several $100s an hour at 10 o'clock at night. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Betancourt, do you want me to repeat any of the questions?
No, thank you. I appreciate it. I plan to vote in favor of the zoning as a select board member, as a town meeting member, and I think it's important that Winchester moves forward with that process. I wouldn't. My only concern is I wish there was more affordable housing strategy included with it, as some communities have done, but we can't let perfect be the enemy of the good, and I think that a process has taken place. It has been, as many of us have already mentioned, it's been extensive. It's involved residents, stakeholders, and specialists in the field. So at this point, as a good partner with the state, who just invested $60 million in a new train station for us, we need to make sure that people have access to that train station. It's being used, and both of ours, we actually used to have 3 train stations in town years ago that we're lucky to have 2. We need to keep people using them. Transportation on the public side is a great way to help people that are low income as well move to our community if we can provide the housing for them. So I think it's a part of our plan. And I plan on supporting it. Losing state grants would be detrimental to Winchester. We have a very effective delegation, and we rely on MassWorks grants and everything to keep the town moving forward. So being a good partner with the state, I think it's an obligation that we have to support the 3A zoning that's been proposed by the planning board. Thank you.
Thank you.
Could I rebut?
Sure.
I just wanted to say that, we do stand to lose funds. I think we need to look at how many funds we are potentially going to lose. I mean, I don't want to lose any funds, but we should look at those numbers and understand what those numbers are. I would not come out right out and say that we're going to face a lawsuit from the state. There are other communities that are working against this, and I think, and even though I support all of the work Planning Board has done, and I do think that we need to follow it to make it work for Winchester. I would like to see more affordable housing and senior housing in that plan.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to make another comment?
Briefly,
Mr. Dixon?
We need to really educate people. There's a difference between 40B, which is a long-term affordable housing issue, and the MBTA Commission area right around the stations. They are similar in their goal of affordable housing, but they are distinct. We should not be like Milton to say we will vote against it and then we'll get a better deal, because again, we have to have the rule of law. What kind of example does this set for our young people or people moving into our communities if we say it's a law, we don't like it, and we're going to ignore it?
Thank you. Mr. Betancourt?
Briefly, thank you. The only thing I'll say on the piece of the communication with residents is there are meetings every minute of the day in Winchester. We have a very active community, very highly skilled volunteers, and but as representatives of the community that people voted us to put into place, we need to be the ones that are at those meetings. People need to trust us that we're going to make the right decisions. Some people say, well, that you didn't have 100 people at that meeting. Well, sometimes it's actually just the 5 people that have been working on it for a long time that you've got to trust and move forward with that outcome. So I don't think numbers necessarily reflect progress, but I think how engaged your representatives are.
Mr. McGonigal? No?
No, I think everything's been said, and sometimes it's best just to
Well,
move
not
on.
everybody had said it yet.
I could say what these guys said, but they've already said it well enough.
Now for just a little change of pace, they're calling this a lightning round. In no more than 5 words, answer this question. And we're going to start with Mr. McGonigal.
Oh, boy.
Would you take action to allow overnight street parking whenever there is not a snow emergency? 5 words. Count them out.
No, let the people park.
Thank you. Mr. Dixon?
We need to hear everyone on the issue.
Thank you. Mr. Betancourt?
No, we need to make some change.
Okay, and Ms. Stromboli? Sorry,
That's okay.
I'm getting a little woozy here, yeah.
No, we need to review this.
Very good. You all get A's on this one. This will be the last question before we go to closing statements. And with this one, we will be starting with, let me get my notes here. We will be starting with Mr. Dixon. Do you support Winchester adopting the Community Preservation Act, CPA, a state law passed in 2000 that enables adopting communities to create a local dedicated fund and to receive additional funds from the state to preserve open space, historic resources, develop affordable housing, or outdoor recreational facilities.
Yes, I support CPA. It's a long overdue measure for this town particularly, which cleaned up a polluted river, a terrible factory situation, and made this a beautiful town with a green ribbon, assisted by the son of Frederick Law Olmsted and his firm, the beautiful design that we have today. And in many ways, the CPA for Winchester, at least, is a next stage in the greening of Winchester, improving the parks and the historic nature of this community, and why people drive through here and say, hey, I want to live there, can I afford to? Those are crucial things, but we recognize that there's a tax element to it. There needs to be a partial credit for that. Perhaps we can delay the extension or override mechanisms another year or two if we pass it, but it needs to be a good faith gesture of things that we do. A lot of other things we could do in town we haven't had time to talk about. That includes having a full preschool as opposed to a lottery that families are subjected to. Looking at the sense of how we go forward and what this town needs to look like in a situation where we're changing dramatically and radically, and we should not ignore the pressure on finance that hasn't been touched about. The multi-million-dollar elephant that's not in the room, that should be in this room, is the fact state revenues are shrinking and have been and will be a potential problem for us in state aid. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Betancourt.
Yes, absolutely. The CPA is necessary for us to create a strategic plan for the future and benefit of the town. Anthea Brady and I are leading the charge in the select board. Anthea is here, our vice chair, and we are working with a study committee. We initially presented to town meeting on it in the fall. We'll formally get a vote on it in the spring, and then hopefully go to the voters along with the presidential election in November on the CPA. The idea of it was the state felt that local communities would underfund certain things they didn't see as priorities, outdoor space and recreation, things we see with playgrounds and fields, historic preservation. We see the facade being repaired on the face of McCall now, and affordable housing. Those were underfunded priorities in communities, but they were necessary. And so the state said, let's create a fund that will also support you if you put a surcharge on and you invest it in yourself to really tackle these underfunded parts of the community, because the neglect that's there over a period of time ends up costing us a lot. But also it's diminished resources for us. So it's hard for us to make decisions between a bridge that's failing and a playground that needs to be done. And it doesn't mean that either one are more important than the other, but the CPA will help us continue with our priorities to keep the town healthy, safe, and active.
Thank you. Ms. Zimboli, you have 90 seconds.
Yes, I do support putting CPA on the ballot. I think it's important to hear from the residents on this. More importantly, when we do discuss CPA in town meeting, I'd like to understand what is the governance structure that is going to provide accountability to the taxpayers, who are the ones that are going to be paying the increased 1.5% on their taxes. Given the fiscal crisis in the town, I would, not crisis, but fiscal concerns in the town, I would recommend that we prioritize the expenditures to things that we already spend money on. Historical buildings, for starters, a lot of the repairs that have been deferred could be used out of this money. So yes, I support it, but ultimately it will be the voter's choice.
Thank you. Mr. McGonigal.
The CPA, as I mentioned earlier, is a wonderful funding opportunity that we should take advantage of. I was talking to a select board member in another town, Wayland, who was one of the first towns to pass it. And the amount of projects that they got done through the CPA made me, frankly, jealous. I want to bring that to Winchester. But there's two parts to it. The first is the financing question, and that's what will be before town meeting this spring. The second part is the bylaw, the governance, the committee that's actually going to determine how this money is spent. And our town manager has already put together a list of dozens of projects that we want to do, only some of which are eligible for CPA money. That means we have to be smart, and we have to know how the CPA funds are going to fit into the bigger puzzle of our budget. That means the governance structure is going to be one of the big projects for our select board this summer. And I want to make sure that that committee, when it's put together, has those perspectives from all those experts that I've mentioned a couple times tonight, capital planning, town manager's office, FinCom, so that it's being done smartly, it's being done efficiently, so we're not tripping over ourselves. And so that the voters know when they go out there in November that their money is going to go the best way possible to continue to make this town the shining example that it really is.
Thank you. We're now going to move to closing statements, and for those, you each have 1 minute, and we go in reverse order of the opening statements, so we will be starting with Mr. Dixon. You have 1 minute.
I have been previously honored to serve on the Winchester Finance Committee, where I was the swing vote to ensure full kindergarten access for all, and I will continue to push for full preschool for all who wish to access it. We must have reasonable commercial development, largely focused on the town center, and establish a new revenues commission to make detailed study and recommendations going forward. As I have suggested, 3 R's of government: respect, reform, and rule of law. Respect means engaging with our constitutional system, enforcing, encouraging, expanding it and related rights across all levels of government, including in the town of Winchester. Reform means looking at and reviewing our basic municipal governing structure and looking at respect and civility across it. Rule of law means to enforce, implement, and encourage the actual meaning of words in the oath or affirmation of office, including to faithfully execute the laws. And we shouldn't be also just spending money here or there on studies and projects we're not going to carry out. Thank you. I ask for your vote, one of your 2 votes for Select Board. Vincent Dixon. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McGonigal, you have 1 minute.
We've had a great discussion tonight. I'm committed to keeping it going, distilling its best ideas down and turning them into a success for our town. The select board is going to have to make some tough decisions in the next few years. But by keeping an open mind and an open ear, I'm going to make sure that we have the information that we need to make sure that we're making the best choices we can, and to lead by example and help distill the signal from all the noise that's out there today. That's what the select board can do. That's what I will work to do. We'll do it so we can spend our funds efficiently. I'm going to do it so we can plan for the future, and I'm going to do it so we're prepared for whatever comes our way. And most importantly, so that we can solve all of those problems together as a town. That is done with communication, it's done with commitment, and it's done with community. And I'm dedicated to all 3. Please vote for me, Bill McGonigal, for the Select Board. And to my kids, Cormac and Charlotte, if you're watching, please go to bed.
Thank you. Ms. Simboli, you have 1 minute.
Thank you to the League of Women Voters for organizing and running this debate, and WinCam for bringing it to our residents at home, and to my fellow candidates for participating in town governance and caring about Winchester as much as I do. I appreciate the opportunity to engage in the civil and respectful discourse brought about by this debate, and look forward to many more questions and concerns of residents in the upcoming weeks. One issue that I haven't addressed that I will work hard on if I'm elected is to encourage a change in our literacy curriculum, which is directly linked to our budget. Our school budget is growing. It's growing by 5.5% this year, and a large portion of that budget, despite decreasing enrollment, is SPED. And SPED is directly linked to our curriculum. And if we are going to be building more housing and we are going to be bringing in more students from all different socioeconomic backgrounds, those students, it is only equitable that those students can access the Winchester schools and get the education that they deserve.
Thank you. Mr. Betancourt?
Thank you.
1 minute.
Thank you. And thank you to League of Women Voters, and thank you to WinCam and everyone here tonight. One thing that I feel good about with my colleagues here is that there are two of us that will be on the select board and two that won't be, but we all will stay engaged in the community because I think that's everyone's track record here. And so I feel good about that. As you know, Bill mentioned several times, we rely on the expertise and the engagement of volunteers. We are an enormously engaged community. But we can't take that for granted. We had a great communications study committee that was set up. Carol Savage and some members from the from town meeting made some recommendations to us on how we need to communicate better. And getting things done is what we do, but communicating the what and why and being able to listen is important as well. And so I think we need to really invest more of our time and energy in that communication piece. So we're connecting with residents. We're not going to be able to borrow our way out of financial problems, and we just can't solve all of our financial issues overnight with overrides. So I think we need to look to balance for the future and for our strategies in the coming years. And I would ask for your vote on the 26th. Thank you.
Can we give a round of applause to the candidates? Thank you all, and thanks to the audience for coming tonight, and thank you to the League for inviting me back again, and I guess I will see you next Thursday for the next debate. Good night.
Thank you, candidates, for showing commitment to our community by running for public office and for participating in our debate. Thank you, Margaret, for moderating the debate. We thank WinCam for producing this event. This event can be viewed on wincam.org. Thank you to members of the public who rose to the occasion and sent us a lot of suggestions for debate questions. Again, we thank the staff of Jenks Center for their assistance with preparations for this event. We thank the town clerk's office and the election workers for organizing a safe, orderly, and inclusive election. We acknowledge contributions by a number of League volunteers who helped publicize, plan, and carry out this series of debates and related online information. And mostly, we thank you, the voters, for exercising your right to vote and have your voice heard. We hope you will join us again next Thursday evening, March 14th, from 6:30 to 8:30 for debates for Housing Authority and School Committee. We will again provide opportunities to speak informally with candidates for town meeting beginning at 6:30. Voting for the town election will be held at Winchester High School from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. on Tuesday, March 26th. Thank you, and have a good evening.
Thank you.